than familiar with. It's what I like to call a universal skill that everyone who uses a computer needs to know, at least in my opinion. We've seen a wonderful evolution of this tool in Office over the years. We actually started a long time ago with just the assumption that when we cut or copied something, it went onto that magical space called the clipboard. But we actually couldn't see it, we just assumed it was there, and generally it seemed to work the way that we needed it to. Then we gained the ability to have the Office clipboard contain multiple items, so we didn't have to cut and paste in sequences. We also got the ability to actually see the clipboard, and that's kind of been carried over. We can still see it with Office 2007 and 2010. Just remember that you need to click the dialog box launcher from the clipboard group in order to see that task pane. Then, of course, we have the ability to see things, work with things, empty the clipboard, and all of those other types of activities that we've gotten so used to being able to do. I'll go ahead and close that out because we don't want to take a look at it right now. Just wanted to remind you a little bit of the evolution of how all of this has happened. That addition of first being able to see a clipboard toolbar and then the clipboard task pane is just part of what they've done to try to make this whole process a lot easier for us. Now, the terminology and paradigm for computer cut, copy, and paste actually comes from the old days of editing transcripts, when people actually physically cut blocks of printed copy and pasted them onto the final layout where they were supposed to be. If you've ever seen a pair of scissors with what seem to be really long blades, they might actually be called editing scissors, where the blades were long enough that they could cut through an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper without having to clip more than once, so they got a nice even line. In any event, that's a little bit of trivia. We've had access to these types of commands on computers really since about the 60s. And thanks to Apple, it was actually Apple in the 80s that gave us the commands that we're used to using today, kind of those universal keyboard shortcuts. If we pause over the buttons, we can see that our Control-C and Control-V and our Control-X and those types of universal shortcuts really are available in any application. It's not Office or even Microsoft specific. So with all that said, why are we talking about it in a new features course for Office 2010? Well, let's just say that paste is now actually the most advanced paste option ever, because Office 2010 introduces something called Paste Preview. I have actually opened the training proposal document in Word, and it has a table in it, if we scroll down just a little bit to about page 2, that talks about some delivery methods. What I want to do with this is I want to actually copy it from Word and then paste it into a marketing PowerPoint that I'm working on that also needs the same information. Both of these files are already open, and they're in the Chapter 3 Project Files folder if you're trying to follow along. So what do we need to do? Well, actually, this part is fairly simple. I'm simply going to select the table. If you're not familiar with tables, the easiest way to select an entire table is to pause over it, and then click on the table selector, which is just to the upper left corner of the table itself. So we'll give that a click. We can see that it's highlighted, and I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut to do a copy by using Control-C. That means that we're finished in Word, so now I'm going to use my keyboard with an Alt-Tab to switch over to PowerPoint. There we go, and here's our marketing file. Now this has lots of slides in it. This happens to be slide 1. I'm going to go to the end of the presentation by pressing my End key. And then I'm going to use my up arrow to move back to slide 14. We want to be on the slide that says Training Delivery Methods. Now this is just a title slide. It also has a logo on the bottom left, and we want to actually paste a copy of our table. Now, you might be saying, well, yeah, so far this is exactly the same. And you're right, the universal skill hasn't changed that much. But the paste option has. And here's where we get to see the difference. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and pause my mouse over the slide where I want it, and I'm going to do a right click. I happen to be a right click person, but know that the same thing would be available if I went to the Home tab and used the paste option from the clipboard group. What I can see here is that I have paste option buttons. This is the new stuff. Instead of just saying cut, copy, or paste, I actually get to see things. Now let me ask you a question before we go any further. If I said something like keep source formatting, or use default styles, or picture, would that actually give you any visual idea of what your table was going to look like when you pasted it from one application to another? Well, probably not, and that's the problem, because different files, different applications can have different styles, different themes, different color sets. There's all kinds of variables that could make this data look different. So now we get to see it visually actually in the document before we make a paste option. So let's just pause over these. The first one, we get a little tooltip, is to keep source formatting, and you can see what that looks like on the slide itself. We also have the option to use destination styles. That, of course, may be a little bit more useful in something like Word where you've defined a table style. We have the option to physically embed it, Or we can do a picture. If you want it exactly the way that it was wherever you copied it, without changing any formatting based on the file, the application, or the styles that have been used, then picture might be a good choice. Or lastly, of course, you can choose to keep text only. And I can kind of pause through these and see which one I like. And actually, for this particular instance, I think I like text only. So at this point, I can go ahead and click that option. And there we have it. So is that a lot different? Well, I'm not sure that it is, except we now get to see these options. What we've had in the past is we've had all of these options, or at least most of them, via a smart tag. We can still see that at the bottom of whatever we cut and copy and paste. Here we can click on the drop-down, and I can see the same options. So if I chose to keep the text only, and then decided, I'm not sure that's the one I want, I could always go back and do one of these other options. And again, even from the smart tag, I get the ability to see that. If I don't want to use a smart tag, of course, that tag will actually go away after you do a couple of more clicks within your file. And don't forget, all of these options are also going to be available if you use the clipboard group from the Home tab and use your Paste Options drop-down. When we click on this button, once again, yet another place where we can see these. So it really is exposed a lot, and we have the option to use these paste options anytime or any place we do a standard cut and paste or copy and paste. Of course, depending on the formatting in the source document and how I pasted it into the new location, I may want or need to do additional formatting with the data once it's pasted into its new home. But one of the reasons we like paste options is that type of work should be minimized. But I just wanted you to see that Paste Preview is another tool that Office 2010 provides that gives us kind of that in-file visual preview of what options we'll do before we actually select them. We have all the same options that we've had as far as toolbars and keyboard shortcuts and right clicks and smart tags, but now we have the visual ability to see what it's going to look like before we actually execute the command.